Es la conmemoración del Día Nacional.
This is the commemoration of the National Day for the dignity of the victims of the internal armed conflict in Guatemala, and Mayanachi women, who are currently seeking justice in the courts, are also participating in the march.
They join this demand for justice, this demand that the state should no longer use sexual violence as a weapon of war. It is also a demand to the army.
Los sobrevivientes de la dictadura militar.
Survivors of the military dictatorship have arrived in the Guatemalan capital to demand that the government of Bernardo Arevalo fulfill its commitment, announced a year ago, to promote a program for the dignification of the victims.
We ask for material reparation, restitution of land, truth, and above all to attend to the elderly women who lost their children, their husbands, in the internal armed conflict.
Los sobrevivientes denuncian que por el
The survivors denounce that, on the contrary, the government has prioritized economic compensation for more than 40,000 former paramilitaries, which contradicts the narrative of a democratic government, as they have reiterated.
It is not possible that the military is being compensated. This does not fit in the mind of a civilized citizenry, to compensate the one who did wrong and to persecute the one who is doing good.
Además de la demanda por la dignificación.
In addition to the demand for the dignification of the victims, there is still a large number of survivors who continue to search for their loved ones who disappeared during the 36 years of military dictatorship.
We continue in the struggle, in the search for justice, in the search for the disappeared, and on behalf of the victims of the internal armed conflict, we will continue to commemorate this day.
El Día Nacional de la Dignificación.
The National Day for the Dignity of the Victims of the Internal Armed Conflict was established following the presentation of the Historical Memory Report in 1999, which revealed that the state committed crimes of genocide.
Santiago Botón, teleSUR, Ciudad de Guatemala.
And Laura Richardson's replacement in the Southern Command traveled to Panama from February 19th to the 20th to meet with the Canal Administrator Ricaurte Vázquez, the Foreign Minister Javier Martínez Sacha, and Security Minister Frank Abrego. Our colleague Reca Chavirabandi with the details.
Alvin Hosley, la nueva cabeza del Comando Sur,
Alvin Hosley, the new head of the Southern Command who replaced Laura Richardson in that division of the U.S. Department of Defense, visited Panama to increase the scope of the already tight control, now labeled as cooperation with key institutions in the country. The president of Panama had already signed several information exchange, security, and migration agreements with the Joe Biden administration. However, the hostility of the new government did not prevent Hosley's visit from sealing larger agreements, the full extent of which has yet to be revealed.
Cuya extensión aún no se ha revelado en su totalidad.
The visit of the commander of the Southern Command, let it be redundant, to our territory makes it clear, loud and clear, who is giving the orders to the government, who is personally directing the operations of aggression and interference in our territory by the armed forces of the United States, by the interests, by the mandates of the White House. The acceptance on the part of the Mulino government is a disgrace, but the people will know how to respond. The people are resisting all the applications of the neoliberal model that has to do with this onslaught of imperialism.
Hosley arrived in the midst of a scandal over migrants being held in a hotel and transferred to a camp in the province of Darien, from where they would be repatriated. The scope of this concession, which some criticize as a covert military base, is also unclear. On the other hand, the insistent narrative of the United States Embassy in Panama about the alleged direct threat from the Chinese Communist Party annoyed the president.
We are not going to talk about lies. That is adding to the morbidity that somehow has been created around the Chinese issue in Panama and the control of the Chinese Communist Party in the canal. For God's sake.
The president cannot claim here that he is only going to talk about the canal, that he is only going to talk about sovereignty. He cannot do that. The national territory cannot be alienated, sold, or ceded to anyone or to any foreign state, and that base of Darien is to alienate and cede our territory.
Contradictoriamente, mientras Trump lanza dardos al gobierno panameño,
Contradictorily, while Trump throws darts at the Panamanian government, the Canal administration signed a cyber cooperation understanding with the Southern Command that includes training in cybersecurity, supply chain security, information exchange, and technical assistance, which in turn expands the agreement signed in 2022 by the United States. The same day Hoseley left, the Canal declared as a priority the construction of the Indian River Reservoir and allocated funds for it, a project rejected by the communities in the northwestern part of the basin that would be flooded. This study was carried out by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and U.S. investors are already eyeing this project. At the same time, while the concessions failed to placate Trump's onslaught, the Panamanian government and the Canal administration hired lobbyists and lawyers in the United States to defend the country, ironically, from the United States itself.
Para defender al país, irónicamente, del propio Estados Unidos. Para Telesur, desde Ciudad de Panamá, Reca Chandiramani.
And in other news, the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería of the National Autonomous University of Mexico opened its doors this weekend. Our correspondent Antonio Aranda with all the details.
Los pasillos del Palacio de Minería.
The halls of the Palacio de Minería host the 46th edition of the National Autonomous University of Mexico International Book Fair, a cultural event that brings together readers of all ages. Alejandro and Lydia are regular visitors to the book fair, besides sharing their love as a couple. They also share their love for reading.
We've been coming here for a while now, and we've been reading and being regular readers. We love coming here. We find things here. We always say, we are not going to buy anymore, and we always leave with books.
We love the place. It's a wonderful place in its architecture, and besides, you can find all kinds of reading.
El profesor Alejandro busca fomentar el
Teacher
hábito.
Alejandro seeks to encourage the habit of reading among his students. So every year, he brings his group to visit the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería.
It is very important in contemporary times to be promoting reading, the approach to literature, and the arts. Undoubtedly, the book fair has a series of events that are significant for the learning of different topics, so that we consider that it is important and valuable that young people are encouraged to participate in these events and continue with the noble act of reading.
Para los jóvenes, es una grata manera.
For young people, this is a great way to get to know new interests.
I find it very interesting to discover new books and see what I can buy, what I can acquire again, and I really like to look for art stuff.
Para los autores, es una oportunidad.
For the authors, this is an opportunity to open a direct dialogue with their readers.
Some of us talk about life, about the world, and there is not much work, and a good conversation arises with the reader, and you entertain yourself talking maybe with the public that hangs around here. You meet interesting people.
Durante la Feria Internacional del Libro del Palacio de
During the International Book Fair at the Palacio de Minería, there will be hundreds of presentations, discussions, and talks with authors. With more than 1,000 cultural activities, the International Book Fair continues to be the main reference in terms of literary encounters and also continues with its main objective.